I guess it's afternoon now. I think so. Okay, good afternoon. Senator Schlossberg, Representative Spallone, and members of this committee. My name is Frank Sykes. I'm the legislative analyst with the African American Commission. I'm here today to speak in support of proposed House Joint Resolution 1. First of all, I'd like to thank you for bringing this bill up for a public hearing. The issue before us today can be somewhat complex and even polarizing. Nevertheless, the Commission recognizes that this discussion and dialogue on race relations must happen in order for Connecticut and indeed the country to continue improving its moral standing on race relations. I must stress that this resolution is not intended at all to determine who's at fault. Rather, it's simply an exercise of reconciliation on what is long overdue. Opportunities such as this must be seized, especially in light of the fact that this country recently took a giant stride in electing its first African-American president. While this is encouraging, it should inspire us and challenge us to continue peeling away at the layers of racial discrimination and intolerance. Without question, different racial and ethnic groups may have suffered various forms of discrimination and oppression in this country at one time or another. However, without question, slavery was unique in the legacy left behind. Across the spectrum of socioeconomic issues, disparities persist that have occurred partly as a result of a system which was designed to oppress a single group of people. Disparities in income and wealth, education achievement, health outcomes, employment discrimination are not coincidental, but rather are the vestiges of a past that linger on today. Why do some blacks with, in some cases, higher incomes and assets as whites still receive higher mortgage rates from financial institutions? Why are there such huge disparities in sentencing across races? I can go on and on. We also understand that it would be wrong to lump a single group of people as being culpable for something they had no direct involvement in, or in some cases, the ancestors were never a part of. Nonetheless, this legacy we inherited created victims. For those who believe in justice and fairness, their responsibility then is to help to improve race relations in this country, regardless of your race and ethnicity. Accordingly, the aim of this resolution is to reconcile these differences and begin a healing process necessary for wholeness and unity. This resolution seeks to close one chapter of this state's hideous past by offering a formal apology. It seeks to continue the dialogue towards racial harmony in the past, the present, and the future. While this is not all that can and should be done in addressing the cancer of racism, we see it as a step in the right direction, hence we support it. Some may say that this legislation is not far-reaching enough. Others may say it's not necessary, but any rational person can say an apology is the right thing to do. I thank you for your time to testify.
Thank you for your testimony today. We appreciate it. Are there any questions? Representative Miller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Afternoon. Thank you for testifying. I'd like to also thank you for bringing this bill to our attention. I had asked earlier if you knew of any other state that has done something similar to this.
Right. I was going to respond to that. Currently, I know there are, I'm just going to read them off: Arkansas, Alabama, Virginia, North Carolina, New Jersey, Maryland, and Florida have all signed a resolution. The House on the federal level has passed a resolution. It hasn't yet been heard in the Senate, but is expected to be heard in the Senate. There's the federal government, right? And I know Rhode Island, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska are considering similar, resolutions.
All right. I would like to state that I will be supporting this bill. I'm going to sign on to it. Right. And I recently read an article in our local paper, The Advocate, about a house in Greenwich that had slaves. And I was surprised, believe it or not. I was surprised when to see the description of the quarters that the slaves had to live in. I went to Africa in 2005, and I stood at the door of no return and tears came into my eyes. This is a very emotional topic, subject for me, and I know that no one in this room today would do such a thing that the people of African American descent experienced. And I think that the state of Connecticut, by adopting this as law, would show their remorse in how people of African descent were treated. Again, I thank you for bringing this to our attention. I did know that Virginia recently did, I guess about a year or so ago, that Virginia had passed the law. And I hope that the state of Connecticut also passes that law. And it's not to, a lot of people, African Americans, have moved on from it. But it's also, I think, by signing on to this or making this a law, it will show that we have come a long ways, and that it will show some regret into what happened to a group of people who were forcibly taken away from their homeland. Thank you.
I agree, and I just wanted to add that it's not meant at all to, you know, I know there's some concern that people have that once you pass such a bill, it could lead to things like reparations and all that, but this is a separate, entirely separate issue. So far, the states that I just mentioned, not even a single one of them has had that experience. So, and there are actually, I know, countries that have also come forward to, both in the continent of Africa and in Europe. So it's pretty much a global thing because people recognize that it's a discussion which can only help improving race relations. So I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Fleischman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to associate my remarks with those of Representative Miller and the testimony that you gave so eloquently a bit earlier. I also have had the opportunity to travel to West Africa and stand at a spot where hundreds of ships set sail with enslaved Africans headed for the New World, and it's a shocking experience to be there and to even contemplate what happened to so many thousands of individuals. And like you, I feel that the least that we can do is to express sorrow, regret, remorse that such things ever happened. And I think that is a step towards healing and moving forward. And my question to you relates to something you mentioned in your last comment, which is, given all that happened, it strikes me that there are folks out there who would look at this resolution and say, well, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. This is just an expression of sorrow and apology and doesn't include any kind of reparation. And I'm just interested to hear what your response to that would be.
Well, I mean, as I just stated, I mean, this is strictly, I mean, a bill which, as I stated in the testimony, that is really just to really to stimulate the whole discussion on, race relations, and to take it, forward. So there are certainly people who feel that maybe it's not far-reaching enough, and I think that's always going to remain there. But that's a entirely separate issue than what this, this is all about. And so far, as I just said, the states that have passed resolutions similar to this have not encountered that problem, that issue. So.
Thank you. Well, that's helpful context for us to have. I'll just conclude by saying that not only do I think that this is the right thing for us to do, given all that happened, I also think it presents a great teaching moment for children, because there are a lot of children who don't yet fully understand the history that this state and this country has in this area, and I think that by going in this direction, we have an opportunity to teach a lot of children about what happened and things that should never happen. So I thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fleischman. Any further questions or comments? Thank you for your testimony. I just think it's important to mention, for the record, I'll ask this in a form of a question, that this resolution provides somewhat of a history lesson and is specific to Connecticut in that it states specific pieces of legislation or constitutional provisions that may have promoted and did promote slavery, and also notes some of Connecticut's contributions to the abolition of slavery and the advancement of civil rights. Is that true?
It's very true. I mean, actually, the initial original language that we had drafted, we recognized Connecticut's, abolition efforts. I mean, it's not, sort of like one-sided to say that somehow Connecticut had no role to play in the abolition. Absolutely not. So we recognize, the entire history, and it's as inclusive as possible. I don't know why it's not in this bill right here, but at some point, I guess as it moves through the legislative process, I am assuming that it will be added in. So.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, sir. It is in the bill. That's why I wanted to mention that for members of the public, and sometimes we quickly scan over these things, but in the file copy the members have, it notes that in lines 31 through 32, the role in abolition efforts, and also in lines 26 through 28, non-importation acts. But I also mentioned specific legislation that advanced slavery in the United States. So I think that it provides a balanced view of Connecticut's history, and that's important for the public and the members to know.
I agree.
Very good. Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Anything further? If not, thank you, sir. Next speaker, Sandra Shar.